Everyone, how's it going? We're probably going to wait a couple more minutes for more people to join. Um, Maybe while we wait, in chat, your trade and where are you calling from?
They do work at your home. Okay. All
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what she said.
You're welcome.
Breath.
All right, we have HVAC and plumbing from Michigan. Hello. Electrical from Oregon. We have Wisconsin, HVAC from Illinois. I'm an electrician from Florida. HVAC plumbing electrician from West Virginia. Hey, welcome everyone. Let's give it maybe one more minute and then we'll get started. This is recorded, so if somebody is not able to join, we'll just send the recording and the deck. Nice, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and solar, Illinois, nice. Electrical plumbing from Ohio, welcome. I was just in Japan and I learned that Ohio is good morning in Japan, so Ohio. Right. We're at 3 minutes past 10 my time. So if you snooze, you lose. Hopefully more people will join the call, but I'll just get started. So just to orient you all, this is going to be a workshop specifically about Dispatch Pro. And my name is Anya. I'm a product manager with Dispatch Pro and all of the dispatching tools here at ServiceTitan. We also have Lucine here. She's newer to Dispatch Pro, but she will be taking over this with time. Today we're going to talk about things that typically come up as questions about Dispatch Pro. And these are the questions that we're going to be covering in the deck. If you have more questions, this is open forum, so please feel free to unmute and just chime in with your question. You can raise your hand or you can put it in chat, so I'll be monitoring chat on the side as well. But what we have pre-planned for you are these questions. Why is dispatch automation even needed? What results are customers seeing? How does Dispatch Pro make decisions? Is it hard to set up Dispatch Pro? How should I think about job types and skill setup? And how do I know it's working? So those are the questions that we have prepared for you, and I can go over them in order. Or if you have questions, meanwhile, as we're going through it, please feel free to chime in. This is super open, so we can make it work for all of you if you have any particular questions. Before I get started, is there anything you would like to add to the list that is not on here that you would like us to cover? Alrighty, let's get started then. High level, why should the trades even think about dispatching AI and why would it make sense? Well, first of all, obviously scaling your business. We did a massive survey about a year and a half ago where we got responses from like 500 dispatchers, 500 owners across different trades. What's some simple questions? How's your dispatching going? How long does it take to hire and train? How many technicians are your dispatching taking care of? And we got some pretty staggering results. 55% of dispatchers said that they're assigned to less than 10 technicians. So that means if your business is growing, for every like 10 to 15 technicians you're planning to add, you need to hire another dispatcher. And that obviously makes things difficult. And when we looked at the next step of it, so yeah, let's say you grew your business 10 to 15 technicians, now you need to hire. 63% of owners said that it takes 4 to 6 months to hire, and 52% of owners said that it takes additional 4 to 6 months to train. So from the moment you realize you need a dispatcher, you're probably 8 to 12 months away from having a fully functioning dispatcher that contributes equally to the team. And then obviously, we always are looking to maximize revenue and figure out how to make the most out of what we've got. And for humans, there's only so much processing that you can do to like so many data inputs you can process to make every single decision. And dispatchers are making so many decisions every single day, every single minute. And we do notice that sometimes there are inefficiencies. Even the best dispatchers sometimes overlook things or are not able to process the whole gamut of information. And one staggering statistic that was pulled recently in ServiceTitan, in the first 6 months of 2024, we saw 20 idle hours per technician per month on average. That's like half a work week a month they're sitting around without work. So those are some of the considerations that nudged us in the direction of building the dispatching AI. And another question that we commonly get is, well, what are the results that the customers are seeing? So these are the results that we've seen across all of the customers that are using Dispatch Pro in comparison to the customers that have not been using Dispatch Pro. And these numbers that you see are relative growth. So we've seen that Dispatch Pro customers are growing revenue 1.5 times faster than non-Dispatch Pro customers. They grow average ticket 1.75 times faster. The dispatcher efficiency goes up by 2. And then we've seen 1.3 times higher sold lead ratio growth year over year. And then we've seen some numbers in smaller customers even higher. So for example, the average ticket growth is 2x for smaller customers under 20 technicians. So all of this is fun and dandy, but you've probably seen some of these already in the decks that were presented to you or some of the materials that we've sent. So I wanted to make this workshop as helpful as possible so that you know exactly what you are in for. And the first question that always comes up is, how does Dispatch Pro actually assign technicians? What does it think through? And we have multiple layers of how Dispatch Pro thinks about it. It's not all of it, not all of it is AI. We also look at your setup and your what we call hard constraints. Your hard constraints are the arrival windows you promise to your customers, whether you even have your technician has a Dispatch Pro license, whether the job type is Dispatch Pro enabled as well, because you can choose to enable Dispatch Pro only for some of your technicians and not for all, or only for some of your job types, not all of your job types. Then we'll look at your zones, skills, shifts, maximum drive time. All of these are hard constraints, so it's a black and white. Technician has a skill, we can send that technician. Technician doesn't have a skill, we cannot send that technician. And that is a really important layer. Then the next layer is soft constraints. Those are the things that I'll demo a little bit later. Those are the things you will see in our setup. A lot of our setup is a trade-off. It's kind of like a soft question. Do you prefer routing versus revenue? Do you care about priority? Do you care about conversion rate or average ticket? Or are you balanced somewhere in between? And those are soft constraints that are not like hard black and white constraints. There's just something that we figure out fluidly to match your shop's needs and to figure out how to get the result that you were looking for. Then the next layer is where we get to actual technician performance. So we're looking at both the repair and the turnover conversion rate, both the repair and turnover average ticket per job type. And we score the technicians based on the settings that you choose for your technician ranking. And for each job type, we actually have a batting order. So technicians at the top are going to be the technicians that we would try to assign if they're available or if there's no better availability. And then after we assess the like hard constraints, the soft constraints, the technician performance, that's when we assign the best tech. And we try to go for the optimal tech because you cannot assign all of your opportunities to your best technician. Your best technician only has so much time in the day. So we do have to figure out how to spread the load. But we try to find the most optimal technician based on the drive time and all of the hard to soft constraints and figure out what will bring the most revenue. And Dispatch Pro has really one track mind. It's always, even when it's thinking about routing, it's trying to bring the most revenue to you. So if it's thinking about routing, it's just trying to cram more jobs in a day. If you're choosing more revenue, then it's trying to optimize for those turnovers. And it has a one-track mind, just make you as much money as possible. If it thinks that like reshuffling the board completely and like doing a whole bunch of changes is going to bring the most result because you're going to get that one best technician to bestest opportunity, it's going to do that automatically. And then just to drill down a little bit more into hard constraints, because this is probably where bulk of the setup is going to be taking place, I have another graphic to show you how Dispatch Pro actually shrinks the pool of technicians when we think about the hard constraints. So Dispatch Pro only looks at technicians that are Dispatch Pro enabled, so the ones that do have licenses enabled. We'll look at technicians that are either in the right zone or business unit. You have a choice whether you want to assign by zones or business units. Then we'll look for the exact skill match. So if your job came in and it has 2 or 3 skills requirements, we're gonna require all of those skills to be present on the technician so that we can match them. And then we'll look at who's actually been available to work that day, who has the available shift. And then we'll look at who is within the maximum drive time. And all of that shrinks your pool of technicians. So sometimes you might think like, oh, we booked this like service job and we have all of our service technicians to choose from. But Dispatch Pro doesn't see it that way because it's going to look only for service technicians that have Dispatch Pro enabled, that have the right zone or business unit, have the right skills or available and within the maximum drive time. So it really shrinks the pool of technicians that it's going to look at. And then those are the technicians where we look at the best performance. And this is kind of where the balancing act comes in with Dispatch Pro, because you need to figure out how to make the pool big enough so there is enough technicians to choose from. So you don't get a lot of like no capacity alerts. And Dispatch Pro doesn't unassign too many jobs, but also make sure that like you only can assign the right technician. So if somebody shouldn't have that service skill, or maybe they have a lower level service skill, we need to augment their skill set to make sure that we don't accidentally send them to a really good opportunity when they really shouldn't have been. I'll pause here. So this was already a lot of information, and next we'll go a little bit more into the live product and some recommendations, but I'll pause here. Like in theory, does this make sense? Are there any questions? Alrighty. I mean, it is Friday before a long weekend, and I hope you guys have a long weekend coming. I appreciate you all joining, and I don't expect you to be super active right now. All right, the next portion that we're going to get into is how hard is it to actually set up Dispatch Pro? And this is where I'll go to a demo. Just want to call out, there are going to be a few videos and articles linked here. So once we send the deck, you can access those and they're going to give you a little bit more details. We have a very nerdy video that goes really deep into how the data behind Dispatch Pro and technician performance is calculated, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty. But without further ado, I'll go into the live environment and show you around Dispatch Pro. So the demo of Dispatch Pro itself is the most boring demo in the world because it's just moving jobs around on the dispatch board. There's nothing special about it from the surface level. It's all happening in the background. And what it's doing in the background is controlled by how you set it up. And the setup of Dispatch Pro itself is pretty easy and self-explanatory. And then once you have the feature enabled, you can actually see that it's all preset. So there's already recommendations in your account. So you actually, if you are kind of like short on time, and if you feel like ServiceTitan knows better, you can just essentially go live. But if you want to really fine tune it and make it follow your secret sauce, we have a bunch of settings available to you that you can tweak, that you can play with. And just to orient you on the page, the settings are organized in a few different tabs that are themed. And once you are in settings, you can also see some set of recommendations that we will be able to provide for you to optimize how Dispatch Pro is functioning. And once you land here, we're not going to have this immediately available. You can call the recommendation algorithm by clicking Setup Check. Going from the Dispatch Pro button, click Setup Check. I can click it now. It will just do the same thing. So it just goes through all of your configurations and figures out what it could be potential problem areas. And then you can open them up and it explains to you what's going on. So like, for example, this technician is missing a starting location. What that means to us is we're not going to know where they're starting the day. So we might just assume or send them somewhere really far away in the morning. And we won't know that they're starting from, like, let's say one side of town, and can put them in a different side of town. No technician shift set up. So it looks like 3 of the technicians don't have any shifts, so Dispatch Pro will never be able to see them. And you don't need to necessarily remember any of this, because you can see like there's the tagline of what this alert is all about. So this one's shifts. Then there's an explanation of why this is actually important for Dispatch Pro, and then the affected technicians or affected job types, because we're going to be looking at your technicians, job types, and everything. And then it just simply takes you to the right page so that you can course correct it. So if Charles, Frank, and Harry are in fact the technicians you want to run through Dispatch Pro, you might want to just go to the technician shifts page and create those shifts for them. Was there a question? Okay, I see Susanna posted a question. Our technicians sometimes start at home and sometimes at the shop. So there is a benefit of updating start and end location, because when you have the start and end location filled in for the technicians, we are taking it as the starting and ending point of their route. So we're gonna try to find the first job of the day closer to their start location and their last job of the day closer to their end location. And technicians typically love that, especially on the days when they start from home and if the home is really far from the shop, so they don't have to travel too far to their first stop or the last stop. And yeah, you have the option to change those settings in the technician settings, which I'm going to get to in a minute. And definitely it's a lot more prominent for larger covered areas. So if you have some area that could be like 2-hour driving between different sides, or even like an hour driving between different sides, it could be a nice technician retention tool that you can kind of keep their routes a little closer, and you can start and end them where it's convenient for them, and not just like where it's convenient, because Dispatch Pro is going to completely ignore where they're located, and you can just put them on their best job. If that's the way you want to do it, like, you can also do it this way. But for technician retention, like, they really love that their start and end location are closer to where it's convenient. Any other questions? So as far as setup recommendations, each of you is going to have your own recommendations, and they're organized by color too. So those orange colors are going to be some more like strong recommendations. The yellow colors are more like hit or miss. If you want to like optimize, you can do it. If you don't want to optimize, you can just dismiss them and move on with your life. All right, and so the settings themselves are organized in 5 different tabs, and there's a few questions. Most of those questions are just pretty intuitive, but they are trade-offs. So like the most important question you have to answer is whether you're going to go more revenue or more routing. And we try to start everyone with more revenue, because more revenue means Dispatch Pro is going to prioritize your turnovers more than drive time to the jobs. And this is intentionally represented as a trade-off, because it is truly a trade-off. If you are going to the mostly routing direction, we can also support that, but that means that we will not assign the best technician to the job, we will assign a closest technician to the job. We're still going to consider performance a little bit. So if like two things are equal or two drive times are equal, we'll try to pick a better performing technician. But we will in general just try to like cram as many jobs in the day, and we'll try to mainly go with the routing side. But with more revenue, you could see that your idle time might not be dropping as much as with the mostly routing, but we will be assigning your best performing technicians to the jobs, even if it takes them a longer time to drive. And this is where we typically see more of like average ticket and revenue going higher than if you were on the mostly routing side. And with that though, like even if you are all the way to mostly revenue, we still respect the maximum drive time, because we understand that there are some limitations to how far technicians are willing to go. And you can set your maximum drive time for your whole account, and then also override it per zone or per individual technician. So we typically recommend roughly 60 minutes as a kind of a good starting point for everyone. If you start getting a lot of maximum drive time alerts once this Dispatch Pro is running live, then you can adjust it up. But you can also consider just doing it per zone. What we typically recommend, like more densely populated areas, like downtowns, like high traffic areas, bringing the maximum drive time down. And then for more rural areas, suburban areas, or like larger coverage areas, bringing it up. So you can always override it by zone, but if your area is pretty homogeneous and it's all kind of similar, you don't have like LA crazy traffic hubs, you can just keep it all as a default that you set in here, and then it will be propagated through your whole account. Then a couple of more things here is where do you want to, whether you want your technicians to get home at the end of the day, or to the engine location at the end of the day. When you put it in neutral, we just consider the engine location as the last stop of the day. When you put it as very important, we're going to consider that it's very, very urgent stuff. So we're going to make an extra effort to get the technicians to that engine location. I know some shops really like to do that because it's a nice technician retention tool. If you set it at not important, we're going to ignore the engine location, and we're just going to take them wherever we think they're going to make the most money. And then this last question is what I was talking about in those circles. This is where you can choose whether you're assigned by zones or business units. Zones are a little bit more flexible since you can assign your technician to multiple zones. Business units could be a little bit more definitive. Was there a question? So I'll move over. Locking jobs are the features that control how chaotic your dispatch board is going to be. Dispatch Pro by default runs every 10 minutes, and it's going to reshuffle your board. If that is a concern, if that's something that is going to be too jarring for you or your dispatchers or your technicians, there are options to make it a little bit more stable. So in this question, 2.1, you can decide how far into your arrival window you want Dispatch Pro to assign jobs. So you can cut off up to 60 minutes of your arrival window just to make it a little bit more stable. And then in the question 2.2, you can log the jobs ahead of start time so that they're locked in place. The technician knows that they need to go there, and it's there. So Sharon, you have a question. If you don't want to use zones and you don't want to use BUs, that's totally fine. In this question, you kind of have to choose one or the other. But if your technicians are not assigned to zones or they're assigned to all zones, then Dispatch Pro essentially ignores it. So you can have it set like, I want to assign by zones. Nobody is assigned any zone, so we assume everyone can work everywhere. So moving on to prioritization, this is where you can tell us which job types you want Dispatch Pro to optimize. And it also highlights some of the things that are going to be important for us to make sure that Dispatch Pro can work properly. So every job type that you have enabled on Dispatch Pro should have a skill. Because if it doesn't have a skill, we will assume anyone can do it. And sometimes it could cause trouble because we will just essentially assume any technician is going to be able to do a job. And if there are truly some job types that are like that, that's fine, but that should be a conscious choice. And then another part is duration. So if the duration is not filled in, you could get some wonky behavior. So we recommend also double checking that every job type you have enabled on Dispatch Pro has a duration set up, so we know how long it's expected to take. Another part of it is setting your priorities. So making sure that the jobs that have the highest priority are at the top, the job that have maybe like lowest priority are at the bottom, so you can split in between. One thing to caution about here is not to put too many jobs in priority one, because then nothing becomes a priority. Like if everything is priority one and like 50% of your jobs end up in this priority, then we won't be able to effectively prioritize them. So I would recommend being very, very scarce with priority one, and then you can get a little bit more in priority 2, 3, 4, and below. And the same thing with tags. So tags that don't have their own priority, but they affect the priority that comes from the job type. So if let's say you have a clock drain that's P2, you add a member tag that's up one priority, that job that's clock drain with a member tag becomes a priority one. Let's see, there's another question. Can Dispatch Pro run on demand? I like it if it ran 6 minutes ago and we want it to run. So currently we don't have an option to run Dispatch Pro on demand, but we are building some functionality that's going to allow you to ask Dispatch Pro for suggestions on demand. So that's going to be coming up probably early next year. Right now, you can only control like how frequently it runs. We can set the setting from 5 minutes all the way to 60 minutes. So it can be a little slower, it can be faster, we can bring it down to 5 minutes. Any other questions on job types or anything that we've covered so far? So the next part is our technician settings. You have all of your technicians listed here. Only managed technicians are able to get Dispatch Pro licenses. So you will see only managed technicians listed here. And you can see a lot of helpful information that Dispatch Pro needs, and you might even use that for other purposes. But we do want the technicians to have a verified starting address, whether they have Dispatch Pro status. You can assign their zones and skills in here. And you also have a few override options. So you can give an individual technician a different maximum drive time if they're less tolerant towards driving time. And everyone has like this, like 1 or 2 diva technicians who are like, I'm never going to drive anywhere further than 30 minutes away. You can give them a smaller maximum drive time, or you can increase it for some of the technicians that might be living in rural areas or commuting a little further to their service area. Then the same thing with routing. With routing, you can either follow individual technician preferences, or you can actually do the groups. Because let's say if you have a really big maintenance department and the skill levels are roughly the same and you don't see a lot of turnovers from your maintenances, you can really lean into routing here just to fit more maintenances in a day. So you can select all of your routing technicians, bulk apply more routing to them, and then your maintenance technicians are essentially going to be mostly routing, while the rest of your shop is going to be mostly revenue. So it's a nice feature to kind of override it on the different groups of technicians. And sometimes also, if you want to have your salespeople, if you have like separate comfort advisors or salespeople, if you want them to be even more on the revenue side because you really want to prioritize their turnovers, you can also select them here and give them like mostly revenue, and then they will be more judged on their turnovers rather than how close they are to the job. And the same thing, you can do overrides for driving to their end location or to home if their end location is home. It is a nice retention tool for some of the technicians, so you could do it a one-off basis just based on the technicians you know. And then start and end location, I already touched on that, so you can set it to be either their home or your business unit address, or you can just select any location. I've seen some uses where a technician starts at their kids' school rather than their home, and the kids' school is a little further out, so it's a nice feature to like let them, instead of driving from home, drive directly from kids' school, and it just makes them happy. And the last part here that could be really, really helpful is assigning skills to tags. So sometimes you have those variations of jobs where you don't necessarily want to assign a certain skill to a job type forever, and it just comes up on the individual jobs. Maybe you have some commercial customers and they have like special equipment that they require or some special skill that they need or certification. You can always put that tag on their location or equipment or directly on the job, and then associate it with a skill so that whenever this comes up, we're looking not only for, let's say, a service technician, but we're looking for that like service technician that has a boiler skill, for example. And the last part in here is your technician ranking settings. So this is going to be one of the most important settings pages because this directly affects how we rank our technicians. And we rank technicians per job type. You have access to the report that's going to be called Technician Performance Report. Even if you don't have Dispatch Pro enabled yet, you might have access to the report already based on some of the configurations from the reporting side. So I know majority have it enabled, so you can potentially look for it. I can show you later how to pull it up. But essentially, yeah, so you have control over whether we look at the short-term or long-term performance. You can choose whether you value average ticket or conversion rate, or if you're in the middle and you want us to combine both. And then you can also tell us how you want to treat technicians that don't have enough data. Those could be your newer technicians, or maybe somebody who went on break and hasn't been working for a while, or maybe somebody transitioned from like your maintenance technicians to service technicians, and they just don't have enough data. You can tell us how many jobs you want them to have before we give them an individual score, and tell us before they get the individual score where you want us to rank them, the bottom, below average, or average. So, I mean, essentially for as long as it took me talking through those settings, could take you, this is how long it could take you to set this up. If you have an advanced idea about how you want to run your shop, how you want to run your dispatch, and what your secret sauce is. And sometimes if you don't have those questions, you might need to have some conversations with your owners, dispatching manager, service managers. It really depends. Sometimes it could be a pretty long conversation because I've seen situations where the owners are mostly revenue. The dispatchers are used to do mainly routing, and then they had to come together and agree on where they actually want to live. And it could be a longer conversation, but if you have a very solid idea of how you want your dispatching to run, you can just go through these pages question by question and change them, keep them, save them, and then this part of the setup is done. So I'll pause here with the dispatch settings on their own, and there are going to be a couple of slides that I have with my recommendations for job types and skills. Any questions on the Dispatch Pro settings alone? Yes, so adjustment of the Dispatch Pro times can be done. It has to be done on our side. It's a configuration. The shortest one is 5 minutes. The longest is 60 minutes. So you have a range to pick between 5 and 60 minutes. But we don't have it available in those settings. So I can do it for you, or somebody from support can do it for you, or your sales rep. Any other questions? Let me go back to the deck real quick. Okay, now the interesting part. So whenever somebody asks me how long it takes to set up Dispatch Pro, Dispatch Pro setup, as you've seen, is pretty easy, intuitive. There's a bunch of questions, answer the questions, and it's done. But then there are other considerations. And this is where I see majority of the time spent in job types and skills. Like, how do you set this up? Especially if you haven't really done this like homework before, and if your job types are too generic or too granular. So there is a balancing act with Dispatch Pro when it comes to job types. More job types is not necessarily better, because if you have a job type, and not to pick on you guys in electrical, I love you all, but I've seen, especially in electrical, where you have a separate job type for like outlet, light bulb, fixture, and like every little thing has its own job type. It's convenient, but also when you think about Dispatch Pro, it dilutes our pool of information about every single job type. Because if all of those have, like every single issue has its own job type, then you don't have as many jobs in that pool. So when we predict that revenue, when we look at the technician performance, we don't have as much data to pull from. So you want to kind of like have your opportunities grouped by value. So when you think about like what is something that brings value, and should I be really breaking it up to fine-tunely, like this is kind of where the mindset change happens with Dispatch Pro. And then like specifically, we want your best opportunities into separate job types, and something that's like not the best opportunity or just a regular service, regular maintenance, they can really be bunched together if they're roughly the same value that you expect from them. And so why do we want your best opportunities into separate job types? You get more accurate revenue predictions. We don't want to dilute your best opportunities with your like mediocre opportunities, because then we're assuming it's a group of all in the same, and then you might get a lower revenue predicted than you can actually expect from this job type. And in about, I think this week, we are releasing a feature that will allow us to look at tags in conjunction with the job type. So we will have a little bit more fluctuation of the predictions within the job type, but we still recommend your best opportunities to be separate job types, because we are going to continue measuring performance for technicians on your job types. And then the second part of it, it's really important to train your CSRs to book the right job types.
Are you going to work, Audrey?
And sorry,
Yeah,
was there a
love you.
question? Never mind. So train your CSRs to get the right job type. And sometimes when you have those job types split off based on your best opportunities, it forces your CSRs to ask the right questions on the phone. So you don't have to do this additional research after you get the job to figure out what it's actually all about. And there are a few examples. I specifically wanted to call out like the age of equipment trades versus age of home trades. So for age of equipment trades, split your job types by age of equipment. So some of the simplest examples for HVAC, like no cool under 10, no cool 10 plus. For garage door, like door stuck under 10, door stuck 8 plus. Those are gonna tell us, okay, everything like 10 plus for no cool, no heat, or any of those is gonna be, this is where our bread and butter is, and we're gonna measure technician performance separately. We're gonna get those more accurate revenue predictions. We're gonna prioritize those job types. Everything no cool under 10 is likely not gonna be as lucrative. So this could be kind of like a separate, more like grouped together job type. For age of home during trades, and I see this actually more rarely than I see with age of equipment trades, but age of home can also tell us a lot about a particular job. So for plumbing, and These are arbitrary numbers. I know it's wildly different based on your area and what types of pipes you typically see in those homes. But let's say a pipe leak under 25, pipe leak 25 plus could really be a difference between like a repipe opportunity and just a basic fix opportunity. So like think about what your area looks like how old homes are in your area, what types of pipes they have, and how frequently you think like there's a good opportunity for a repipe, and just break off those. And you have those service calls that are for homes that are good opportunities, and break them off into a separate job type. And for electrical, I know also could be a difference in terms of age or like the timing between your rewiring or panel change opportunities. But on average, what I've seen is like partial power under 20, partial power 20 plus. That's something that can tell us, hey, like this, anything 20 plus is going to be a better opportunity for a rewire than any other job. So, and like those are just examples. Obviously, you know your area better, you know your specific situation better. So figure out where the threshold is, and try to separate those into separate job types, and train your sales reps to always ask those questions. Any questions here?
775x2.
Right, so now we go into skills. So skills could be another confusing area because it's for most of you, it's not a concept that you would actually think about before going into Dispatch Pro, because it's not necessarily as needed. Your dispatchers typically know your technicians, so they don't necessarily have to fill out the skills unless you're really large and your dispatchers don't know technicians personally. But these are my general recommendations for skills. So if you're smaller, if you have under 20 technicians, you can just, and you are one trade, you can just start with basic groups, maintenance, service, sales, install. And if some of these are not applicable to you, if let's say you're electrical and you don't have installers, just skip that. You can do maintenance, service, sales. So in general, like that's a really good start because that helps us group technicians, but it's not so granular that it limits the pool of those technicians. If you remember earlier, I showed that circular graphic that like shrinks the pool of technicians. This is where it can happen. Like if you have your skills aligned to your job types, it can get out of hand in terms of management, because as soon as you're getting new technician starts or like they are getting a new certification, like they're up their skills, you have to constantly go in and out and change those. With those basic groups, maintenance, service, sales, install, you don't have to. You just know this is my maintenance technician, this is my service technician, this is my sales technician. It's very black and white. It's a lot easier to manage, and it gives a larger pool of technicians for Dispatch Pro to look at. If you're 20 plus technicians, then just having basic groups can get a little bit out of hand too. So you can start splitting them by levels. Maintenance level 1, 2, and 3. So 1 could be your lower level, 3 could be your higher level, and then kind of do the same for sales and installs if that's applicable. And then if you are a mixed trade and a larger shop, then you can create skills that are like plumbing maintenance level 1, plumbing maintenance level 2, and just like having like your trade, your like technician specialty and their level. And that typically gives us a very good understanding, because what could be dangerous if you're a mixed trade, if you just say maintenance level 1, we're not going to know who's plumbing and who's HVAC, so we might have some crazy recommendations. So you definitely want to make sure that you're like plumbing, HVAC, electrical, all of that is separated. And then there is a place for job type specific skills, but those are mainly for more rare skills. And some of the examples could be for HVAC, like boiler or oil furnace, for plumbing, tankless water heater, backflow testing, for electrical troubleshooting or wire fishing. And then we can also use skills for like one-off things as special abilities. Like I've seen skills like Spanish for Spanish speaking technicians, or ladder, they carry a ladder on a truck. So there's just a few examples of how else you can use skills. But like the general recommendation is keep them as broad as possible and only use those unique skills for special situations. Any questions on skills? And so I think we're coming to an end of the presentation. Just the last slide. So if you kind of want a snapshot of where we recommend you start versus where we recommend you graduate to prepare for AI. In the basic level, make sure your job types, your jobs are booked to the right job types. If you have a large area, split your coverage area into zones, so it'll make it a lot easier to assign technicians appropriately. Create those technician skills, start regularly creating shifts so that we know when technicians are available, and set up your arrival windows. For those of you who will die on a hill, not arrival windows, we support you. All day arrival windows are still going to make a lot of sense for Dispatch Pro. So we recommend just create one all day arrival window. And then the reason is for those of you who do all day windows, I know that most of you also do sometimes on time guarantee or first call guarantee. So for those, you will need to create like a little short arrival window. You can even create a window that's like 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. And then that will tell Dispatch Pro that that job has to happen at 8 a.m. sharp. So we still recommend having the arrival windows feature set up, even if you do all day. And if you do actual custom like time frames for your customers, if you provide 2, 3, 4 hour arrival windows, then this is definitely a no-brainer. Dispatch Pro abides by arrival windows. It never goes beyond arrival windows. So it's a really, really helpful feature to have. And I highly, highly recommend having that set up. And then kind of like the more intermediate path, define your own dispatching philosophy. Sit down with your management, sit down with your service managers, and maybe some of you are more senior technicians, and figure out how you actually want to dispatch so that everyone is on the same page. And when you implement Dispatch Pro, everyone knows what to expect. So if a technician comes in and says, why am I not assigned jobs? Well, that's because we now prioritize revenue. And if we look at the stack ranking order for this job type, you are number 7 and not number 1. So you're not getting the best opportunities. So it makes conversations internally a lot easier. And if you have that philosophy that everyone's aligned on, it makes it a lot easier to implement and have everyone on board. Then the second part is assign your skills to both job types and technicians. If you forget one or the other, we're not going to be able to do a proper match. So the job types need to have skills and technician need to have skills for us to do the match. And then the same thing, assign your zones or business units to technician if you want to group them. If you don't want to group them, if you kind of like everyone does everything across the entire area, you can just leave it blank and then we'll assume everyone can do everything. And then, yeah, split up your job types into your best opportunities. I think I've gone over that long enough. You all already remember. And then the advanced, train your CSRs to always ask equipment and home age. I know sometimes it could be stressful for them. It's an extra question they have to ask, an extra like half a minute on the phone, but it really, really helps us to know what that equipment or home age is so that we can identify the best opportunities. Then another part that might not be obvious, but make sure your technicians always dispatch, arrive, and close out jobs on time, because Dispatch Pro doesn't know what technician is thinking. We're only going to know what they did in the app. So if they didn't dispatch, we might move the job to another technician. If you have it set to be very fluid, they might start driving. If they didn't dispatch, we could move the job to another technician. Like that's happened before. So we definitely want to make sure that they dispatch, arrive, and close out on time. So the Dispatch Pro knows exactly what's going on. And if the technicians are dispatched, the job gets locked on them. And then also think about consistently creating your estimates and leads that link to the original calls, because that's how technicians get credit for turnovers. If you create those newer jobs that come out of the previous jobs and they're not linked together, the technicians don't get credit and you might get inaccurate performance measurement. I'll pause here as well. Any questions? Alrighty, so the last thing I wanted to show is that how do I know Dispatch Pro is working? First of all, you will see jobs moving on the board automatically. You will see like little lightning bolts on every job that Dispatch Pro has assigned. And then look out for the changes in the metrics that you normally check. So if you are really into revenue optimization side, check your average ticket and revenue. If you are all the way into the routing side, check your idle time and drive time. And then we have two reports that are critical that we really recommend you checking. That's your technician performance report, where you can see your batting order per job type, and in the Dispatch Pro utilization report that tells you how much you actually are using Dispatch Pro and how many jobs you are letting run through automation. Let me get into the chat questions. Okay, so Haley's asking about making Dispatch Pro work better with available capacity planning. So when a job is booked, we consider drive time. Yeah, so there are a couple of ways that we can manage that. So in the capacity planning tool, there is a setting that's called availability threshold that you can set to be like 30, 45, 60 minutes. And that automatically blocks off some of that time in between jobs for the drive time so that you don't overbook because the technicians still need to get there. So that's one side of it. And then another side of it, if you send me your account name, I can also take a look at how your account is set up, because sometimes there is a setting that allows the drive time to be included in the job duration. So this way you can fit a few more jobs on the board with Dispatch Pro, and sometimes it's off. So I can take a look at it and see if we can change it over. So Susanna was asking a question about CSRs and answering multiple phones at the same time. And how do you make sure that we're not under or overbooking? We do recommend to use technician shifts for this situation for sure. Technician shifts can be propagated both into the capacity planning and into Dispatch Pro. And then sometimes also, if you do want to overbook on purpose a little bit, you can make your shifts go beyond your arrival window. So on the capacity screen, the part of the ship that goes beyond the arrival window won't be visible, but Dispatch Pro will assume that it's there. So you can essentially kind of inflate capacity for Dispatch Pro, but make it a little bit more tight for your CSR so they're not overbooking intentionally as much. And then also, shameless plug, I'm not working on it, but soon we do have a new capacity planning tool coming out in about a month when we have our Pantheon conference. So it's going to be a lot more flexible. There will be a lot more options. And I think for some of those situations, it's going to work much better. And yeah, so that's going to be out about a month. If you are at Pantheon, there's going to be a deep dive session on capacity planning. If you're not at Pantheon, we will probably be following up with a bunch of workshops on capacity specifically. And hopefully you will all be able to take advantage of it. Oh, and Sharon, I see your question about calling your customers ahead of time. So let me show you the setting that can help you with that. So the setting in locking jobs, it locks the job in place before the start time. So let's say you have a job that starts at noon. If you want to call the customer like 10 minutes ahead of time, you can just set it 10 minutes and then it will lock at 10 minutes ahead of time. And then call the customer, make sure that they're there, and like that will not move the job anymore. So, Susanna, another question. How do we manage on-call technicians? So yeah, right now it's a bit of a limitation. Dispatch Pro only looks at the available shifts. So if you have some of your technicians on call after hours or on the weekends, we do ask to create available shifts so Dispatch Pro knows that they're available. We do have the improvement on our roadmap to include on-call shifts into availability, but that's probably not going to come until earlier next year. Any other questions? And this was the first of a kind workshops that we've done. I also wanted to ask, was this helpful? Was the information helpful? Was there anything that you wish I covered that I didn't? Very quiet, so I'm going to assume it was helpful. Thank you. So we have 4 more minutes. If you guys are ready to hop off and get on with your Friday, feel free. If you want to stay back and ask more questions, I'm going to be here for 3 more minutes. Thank you everyone for joining. I know it's Friday before a long weekend. Hopefully you all get to have your long weekend. I appreciate you all joining. Susanna, I don't manage the capacity planning tools, but there will be a deep dive session at Pantheon. And after Pantheon, we're probably going to have some workshops. Let me take down your name. I'll pass it on to our capacity team and make sure that they reach out to you once they have the ability to do some customer facing conversations. If there are no other questions, thanks everyone. I'll let you all get on with your day. I appreciate your time. And if you have more questions, we'll send you a follow-up email. Feel free to respond to it and reach out to us. You can also reach out to your CSMs. They can route your questions appropriately. And then we'll have another one of those in a month. Thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend.